Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have the very best draft that I think you can build with both Haaland and Salah in it. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, if you watched my video on Wednesday, my latest draft and all of my drafts really thus far do not have Erling Haaland because I think he's very, very expensive and I can build a much better team without him. At least that was my thought process before I actually tried to build a few drafts with him, and you'll see today, they look pretty good. So I don't think it's out of the question going with Haaland, and it's crazy to say this, but it now feels like going without Haaland is the template, and picking Haaland is going against the template because he's down at about 30% ownership, and in the more engaged managers, it might even be lower than that. So it's quite exciting, really. Going with Haaland, you might get a huge rank rise in Game Week 1, and specifically Game Week 2 against Ipswich if he does very well. And I would love to know down below in the comments, does your latest draft have Erling Haaland? So I will take you through the draft. There are a few things that I like. There are obviously a few things that I dislike, and we'll talk through all of those and some alternative picks that you can go for. I am delighted to say that Fantasy Football Hub is now up and running, and you can see that this team is rated at 86% with a predicted points of 59.4, and you can now get your team rated for free using the link in the description, and I'm going to show it on your screen now. This has blown my mind. Such a simple feature, but brilliant. You can now upload a screenshot to Fantasy Football Hub on the app or the website, and this isn't sped up in seconds. It will analyze the screenshot and put those players in. So you don't have to go through and pick all the players individually and keep changing them. You can just upload the screenshot and bang, the team's there. And let me know down below if you do this for free. Use the link in the description. Obviously, it does help me out. Then you will let me know down below in the comments, what is your team rating and what is your predicted points for Game Week 1? And can you beat this? That's not very good, 86% I would say, in comparison to previous seasons. So I think you can probably beat it. But yeah, do check it out, link in the description. So with this team, again, caveat that I don't have Haaland in my drafts, but I do really like this draft. There are a couple of ways that you can go about this, right? If you're going to try and squeeze Haaland in, you can go really cheap in the defense, and you can see I haven't done that, which allows you to pretty much get Haaland and a very good attack. So if you want Haaland, but you don't want to sacrifice all those good midfielders and those good forwards, and you don't want a real budget enabler in there, which you would have to otherwise, by all means, go for like 4.5 million pound defenders and rotate them. That could go really well. Or you actually go, do you know what? I'm going to sacrifice the midfield a little bit. There are some really good 6.57 million pound midfielders. I'm going to go expensive defense forwards. You get this, you get the gist. You can basically choose where you want to sacrifice because you will need to sacrifice somewhere when 15 million of your budget goes on Erling Haaland. So let's go through the team. In goal, I've currently got Sanchez. In my previous draft, I had Verbruggen, but Verbruggen is now out with an undisclosed issue and still looks like he's going to be starting the season. So Verbruggen is now out of the question, and this happens during pre-season, right? So I don't really think it's worth at the moment getting too stressed about which 4.5 million pound goalkeeper we're going to choose. However, I will just make a note on Sanchez. Apparently, he will be number 1 at Chelsea this season. That's what all the rumours are going around at the moment. And after Manchester City, the fixtures are unbelievably good. You can see here, Wolves, Palace, Bournemouth, West Ham, really nice fixtures for Chelsea after that first game. And of course, it isn't nice going into Game Week 1 with your keeper playing against Manchester City, but you do need to look beyond that. Your goalkeeper's going to be in your team. Unless you're playing a wild card in the first few weeks, they're going to be in your team for at least like 6 to 8 weeks. You don't want to make goalkeeper transfers. If you are new to the game, that is not a position that you want to be using transfers on. So look beyond Game Week 1 and the fixtures are there. And actually, Chelsea were pretty good last season defensively, and I'd expect them to continue to improve this season with lots of players now getting more time to play together, and the team will gel a lot more. And players coming back from injury as well. So I do think that at the moment, if Sanchez is 100% going to be the number 1, or Petrovic, whoever it is, 4.5 million for a Chelsea goalkeeper with those opening fixtures does look a bit of a no-brainer at the moment, and I think that will probably become the template. Now, in the defense, there are so many ways you can approach this. I've just spoken about the fact that I actually do really like the idea of going for loads of 4.5s and rotating them. That could work. Or just going for one expensive defender and then 4.5s elsewhere. But what I don't want to do when I have Haaland in my team is I don't want to feel like I'm sacrificing too much elsewhere. And if I put Haaland in at the expense of any good defenders or any expensive defenders, that's the point when I just say, well, I don't want Haaland in my team then, and I end up removing him. So in my head, it has to be a well-structured, balanced team. And all I think is if you go with just cheap defenders, you're booking in transfers. There's no way that at least one or two premium defenders will just pop off. It will be Gvardiol and Porro, or Saliba and Gabriel. There will be a point when you're like, I really want to squeeze a £6 million-ish defender into my team. And of course, you can't have them all, but I feel like it's better to start with a couple of expensive defenders. And if, for example, Arsenal defence aren't very good this season and Gvardiol's are playing a different role and he's being rotated, well, then yeah, then you can downgrade them and you'll have money to play with. It's just easier to start in a position where you at least have a slightly expensive defence or a couple of decently priced defenders. So for me, I would want at least one £6 million defender, but you don't have to have two. The issue with having two here, in terms of structure, is it means that I can't even afford a 4.5 defender on the bench. And initially, I thought that's not a good thing, right? You don't want an overly cheap bench with no decent subs. But £4 million defenders will arise. There'll be probably a £4.5 million midfielder that will arise as well. That will be good options. And at the moment, that looks like that could be Barco of Brighton. He plays at sort of left back or left wing back. And Estepinian is out after his, I think, ankle surgery. And it looks like he will not be fit to start the season. If you can get the first 5 or 6 games with Barco, there's not much difference between Barco and someone like Dunk or Anderson if he's starting pretty much every game. So I think in pre-season, if a couple of £4 million defenders arise as good options, why not make the most of the budget and then use it in your starting 11? So I actually don't mind this structure here. And you can see this is a very good defence. So I have Saliba, I have Gvardiol. Of course, it would be nice to get Ben White. It would be nice to get Trent in there. But you do have to be realistic if you've got Erling Haaland in the team. So I really like having those two £6 million defenders. And then I think the standout 4.5 at the moment for me, if you're going to have to play them every week, in which case you would mostly here, because you probably don't want to rely on Barco, is Mykolenko. I know he's got a couple of tricky fixtures in Game Week 2 and Game Week 4 against Spurs and Villa. But outside of that, Mykolenko's got pretty good fixtures. He's playing in one of the best defences in the league. And he's only 4.5 million. So I think if you're going to have to rely on that player every week, Mykolenko might be the one. Outside of that, I like Anderson. I like Gay. I like Dunk. I like Konsa. There are some really good 4.5s. You could go for Van der Ven. You could go for Lissandro Martinez. So many good options, but Mykolenko probably stands out at the moment. So a little bit ranty there, but I guess the thing that I'm thinking about more so than the personnel is the structure. And I think a lot of people will look at this and just say, sacrifice one of Saliba or Gvardiol and improve the bench. And I really don't mind that. Because listen, if you go for something like, let's say you go for Munoz rather than Saliba, right? And Munoz is 5 million. So you take $1 million out of that Saliba spot, go for Munoz. That allows you to do Barco to Dunk for a bit of safety, and then Harwood Bellis up to Konsa. It will give you two really solid first and second subs there. And I do really like that. But I also like the idea of obviously of covering that Arsenal defence. So let me know what you think of having a cheaper bench. It's not for everyone. That's the defence. Let's now take a look at the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and it is a midfield 4 at the moment in this team, lining up in a 3-4-3. Just quickly before I actually look at the 4 starters, on the sort of £4.5 million midfielders, there's not a real standout at the moment, but having spoken to a couple of Crystal Palace fans, and let me know down below if you disagree with this, if you're a Palace fan watching, França could be getting slightly more minutes this season with the departure of Elise, and also him building into the squad as well. He got some minutes at the end of last season, I believe. Listen, I don't know a great deal about him, but it sounds like he could at least get some minutes. But he does block a third Palace spot. And I would just say that Palace players probably, you could end up at some point this season wanting 3 of them. So maybe it's not that smart blocking it with a player that's sitting third on your bench. But anyway, we'll talk about £4.5 million midfielders when we see a little bit more from pre-season. So on the 4 midfielders that are starting, again, I'm actually going to talk about structure first here, because personnel we can decide later. It's about what is the structure you want to build for your team. And this is one of the big issues with me, for me, going with Erling Haaland. So I've obviously got Salah in here. That's the name of the game. We want Haaland and Salah. Salah's fixtures are unbelievable. I've seen people go without Salah. I've seen people go without Haaland and Salah. Salah's non-negotiable for me unless we see something horrible during pre-season, that he just doesn't look good under Arne Slot, or he looks tired, fatigued, and we just but even so, there's a good chance that I still go with him. But so with Salah in there, obviously after that, you've then got loads, well, maybe not loads, but significantly more than usual between kind of 9.5 and 10 million. I'm probably not going to list all of them here, but KDB, Foden at 9.5. You've got Son at 10. You've got Saka at 10. You've got Palmer at 10.5. And in particular, I'm talking here about Foden, Saka, and Palmer. I think they are 3 assets that are going to be extremely good this season in FPL. And I think at various points, you are going to want to own at least one of them. The issue with this structure in this team is once you have Salah and Haaland, assuming that you also want decent players around them in the midfield and maybe the defence, it's very difficult to also squeeze in a Palmer, Saka, or Foden. Foden's obviously the easiest to do so. And listen, people will point to my defense and say, this is why. Strip back Gvardiol and Saliba and then put more money into the midfield. And if you were to downgrade Saliba and Gvardiol to two £5 million defenders, you would be able to get someone like Gordon up to Foden. So it is feasible to do. But then again, I look at my defence and I'm like, I'm sacrificing so much just to do Gordon to Foden. Is Foden that much better than Gordon? Maybe not. So it might not become an issue, right? The three of them could do quite poorly this season. But again, I'm not even talking about Son, who's been so consistent, chucked in there. I just think that it makes sense structure-wise. Completely ignore which one you go for. It makes sense structure-wise to have at least one around that 10 to 10.5 million pound price tag, just so that you can move in and out and switch around a little bit easier amongst those. I'm going to call them semi-premiums. That's just my opinion on it. Again, I remember we talked about this like 2 seasons ago, it wasn't even last season, about the £6.5 million midfielders and having one of them because it's the best price point, and it didn't end out playing out that way. So it might not be the case that you need someone at that price point, but I think it could be valuable. Other than that, so if you ignore the fact that I don't have one of Palmer, Saka and Foden, which is a big issue, it's actually a very nice midfield. So we've got Salah in there. Then we've got Gordon as the most expensive after Salah at 7.5. Unbelievable last season, especially at home. It's a great opening fixture at home against Southampton. I will just say for Newcastle, there's only 2 home games in the opening 5, and that's Southampton and Spurs. I think Gordon could be maybe getting slightly overhyped because, again, unless he changes something this season, he really struggled away from home last season, and 3 of those opening 5 fixtures are away. But I still think at 7.5, especially with that Game Week 1 fixture, he could be really nice. I do have Eze, and to be honest, if I'm talking about one player outside of maybe Salah that has been in every single draft, it's Eze. 7 million feels really good for him. If he was 7.5, maybe he'd be in less, but at 7, there's no one around that price tag that I think gets close to him. And I spoke about in the past video, the other reason I like Eze at 7 is there are quite a few decent 6.5s that I'm not sure how they'll perform, but I could imagine they'll be really nice. The likes of Gibbs-White, Garnacho, Matoma, all of these could be Bailey, could be really nice options. So if you start with Eze and he doesn't perform, you've got lots of 6.5s that you can switch to instead. So I really like the idea of having Eze in there. And then I've got Nkunku. Didn't really speak about him much in my last video because I had Palmer in there. And I'm not saying you can't have Palmer and Nkunku, but maybe double Chelsea attack against City at home in that first game does feel a little bit overkill. But as I spoke about with Sanchez, the fixtures after the City game are brilliant. Nkunku, I don't think will be on penalties, but there's a 5% chance he takes one this season. Might be on some set pieces, but I expect him, if he has a solid pre-season, to play quite a few minutes for Chelsea. And he's 4 million cheaper than Palmer. Now, Palmer will be a better asset, hands down for me. Maybe not. I think he'll be a better asset because of the penalties, because of the Premier League experience. But Nkunku doesn't have to be a better asset than Palmer. Nkunku doesn't even have to be an equal asset. He just needs to get close-ish, and it probably justifies saving 4 million because you've got other captaincy options in your team. So, I mean, I look at that midfield, if I ignored the whole price point issue that I raised, Salah, Gordon and Nkunku Eze is very, very strong. The only issue is, like I said, what happens in game week 1 if Palmer, Saka and Foden all get a brace? I mean, you're panicking. You're ripping up your entire team, probably using, unless you're selling one of Salah or Haaland, 2 or 3 transfers at least to then scramble to only get one of them. It just feels like you're on the back foot slightly there. But the positive is that you will have Erling Haaland. So let's take a look at those 3 forwards. So moving on to the 3 forwards, of course, we do have Erling Haaland. I didn't really speak about him much, in all honesty, in the video on Wednesday. And, I mean, I still don't know how to feel because my initial instinct, and even not my initial instinct, just my analysis of it at the moment is 15 million just, it really is not worth it for Erling Haaland, even with captaincy considered. And I actually I posted a very jokey tweet about Haaland. Basically, on the FPL site, you can order the players by value, which basically divides their total score by their price, which gives an indication of points per million. So how many points do you get for each million that player's worth? So a player that scores lots of points for a cheap price is, of course, going to be the most valuable. If you just go by forwards, not players in the game, but by forwards, Haaland is the 19th most valuable forward. In other words, he is not scoring many points in comparison to his price. Ollie Watkins is actually top of this list, but Haaland's in there amongst the likes of Nilmo Pay and Welbeck. He's below Cameron Archer. He's just not... He's not worth 15 million in terms of the points that he gets, but that is obviously excluding the captaincy discussion. And the fact that he is a reliable captain in some weeks, or most weeks, that does obviously change the discussion. And of course, you're not going to, off the back of that, pick a front three of Archer, Welbeck and Mopay. That doesn't paint the entire picture. And Haaland didn't play nearly as many games as we expected him to due to injury. And obviously that is an issue in and of itself. But that obviously doesn't paint the entire picture is what I'm trying to say. And he is still a fantastic option. No one's sitting there, I think, and saying Haaland is not a good FPL option. It's just about, is it worth spending 15 million of your budget? And I'll leave that down to you to decide yourself. But you can see you can build a very good squad with him in. So Haaland's in there. And I think the big drawing point towards us for Haaland is Ipswich at home in game week 2. If he didn't have Ipswich at home in game week 2, let's say it was Brentford away, not an easy fixture, not a difficult fixture, and his opening fixtures were, it can't be Brentford away, let's say it's, I don't know, Wolves away. If it was Chelsea away, Wolves away, West Ham, Brentford, Arsenal, that was his opening fixtures, you'd feel a bit more confident going without him. But the fact that it's Ipswich at home in game week 2, and this is no disrespect to Ipswich, we're expecting them to be weaker than a lot of the other teams in the Prem, and maybe they won't be, but it does on paper look like a very decent fixture. It feels crazy going without him for captaincy for that week, especially when Salah's got something like Brentford at home. Not a bad fixture, but you definitely prefer to captain Erling Haaland. So obviously Haaland's in here. That's the whole point of the video. Isak is in there as well. And I would say, I said Eze is probably the most nailed after Salah for me. That's a lie. It's Alexander Isak. I haven't built a single draft. And by the way, I've built about 50 drafts already. I haven't built a single draft without Isak. The price is too good. The fixtures are too good. He's too good. He's one of my favourite players in the Premier League. I just think he's exceptional. He should be on penalties. His minutes should be good. He looked very fit last season. The big doubt always with Isak is his fitness and his injury record, but he looked so good last year. I just love him. I think he's absolutely brilliant. I haven't built a draft without him. So Isak's in there. And then the way that you can afford such a good draft with Haaland and Salah is by having a budget enabler in there. And that is João Pedro for me at the moment at 5.5. Lots of people speaking about him. He does look to be fantastic value. It is a risk starting with someone at 5.5 that you need to start every week because usually their minutes probably aren't particularly great. And there is the worry there with João Pedro. But also there's not many ways that you can pivot out of João Pedro unless you downgrade someone else. So it's a double transfer and you have to make obviously a downgrade elsewhere because yeah, you've got like Armstrong at 5.5, but there aren't many, like let's say that Gordon didn't do very well. You can change to so many players in midfield at a slightly cheaper price or similar price. With João Pedro, there's not that many options. Obviously, if you started with Watkins, loads of forwards you could downgrade to. So João Pedro doesn't feel like a great starting point unless he does very well. And listen, his data on every play is brilliant. He's on penalties as far as we're aware. And I think his minutes will be better under new management as well. So I think he could be one of the best options to start the season with and be one of those players that by like game week 8, he's already risen almost 1 million. It could be like that. My only concern would be the opening fixtures aren't great. Everton defensively was so good last year. So that's not a great fixture anyway, on paper at least. Then he's got Manchester United. Listen, you can say what you want about Man United. Looks like they've making signings and that they could improve this season. And then Arsenal, they're not a particularly good opening 3 fixtures when you have to play him pretty much every week. So I like him. I think it's absolutely fine going with him. And listen, if he scores 1 or 2 goals in the opening 3 fixtures and then goes into Ipswich at home and Forest at home, you are laughing. You've done a great job picking him. But if he blanks in those 3, it feels tough because there are some other strikers and midfielders that I think could do very well over the opening 3. Speaking of, and probably my second favourite option, maybe that £5.5 million price tag, is actually Hudson-Odoi. So I did build this draft in a 3-5-2 with Hudson-Odoi midfield because the opening 3 for Nottingham Forest, they're brilliant. They're really, really good. Then they obviously tail off after that. And I do also think that I also quite like the idea of having 5 midfielders because they tend to be slightly better in FPL. Not always, but just extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet. So, yeah, by all means, do João Pedro to Hudson-Odoi or another midfielder of your choice at that price. Or you could even switch to a 4-4-2 if you wanted to, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. So, that is the draft. I would love to know down below, do you agree with Fantasy Football Hub? Would you rate this at 86%? Or do you think it's slightly better? That's like an 8.6 out of 10. I don't think it's quite that good, maybe. But I wanted to show you that you can build a balanced, good draft with Haaland and Salah in. And that's why the defense isn't super cheap. And it's why I haven't really sacrificed massively anywhere. I would say that the big sacrifice, there's 2. No, there's three big sacrifices here. One, the bench is very weak at the moment unless we get some really nice £4 million budget options emerge. João Pedro is a bit of a risk when you have to start him every week. And then I don't have one of Palmer, Foden, or Saka. Those are the three big sacrifices. But, and this is a big but, you have Erling Haaland. That is the whole point of this, is that you have that £15 million monster that not many other people will have because it's difficult to get him in. And so I don't think, I mean, is it worth having Haaland to make those three sacrifices? Potentially it is. All you need Haaland to do is score 1 or 2 against Chelsea and then hat-trick against Ipswich when you captain him. And it's 100% worth it. Either way, you're going to have to make sacrifices. And this is why I'm so excited about FPL at the moment. It feels different this year. You can't build a draft that looks good or it looks good in every single area because you're always missing someone quite key and often 2 or 3 key players. So yeah, let me know what you think of this team. Let me know what you would change. I think a lot of people would probably lose one of Saliba or Gvardiol and just strengthen up that bench a bit, which is absolutely fine. But that is a very nice looking starting 11. So guys, I thought I would give you an update on how I'm doing over at One Future Football with my job as the football manager of South London United. And if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, in the description down below, there will be 2 links. One is the link to sign up for free and say that you support my team that I manage, South London United. And the second is a link to explain what on earth I'm talking about. It's only a 4-minute video. It's pre-season. You should have plenty of time. I mean, it's a Friday morning. What else are you doing? Please go and watch that 4-minute video where I explain what this is and why I would love your support in supporting the club that I manage. But if you do know what I'm talking about and you've been following along, we've only got 3 games left of the season and we are currently in 2nd place. Incredible. We finished last season bottom of the table. We're now in 2nd. And this week we play against top of the table, Brazil, Amazonia. If we beat them, we go top of the table, and then we will probably go into the playoffs in 1st or 2nd, which is a brilliant position to be in. So the top 6 in the table will go into a playoff-style tournament, and hopefully we can top the league and win the tournament. The team's looking very strong. It's been pretty consistent all season. We do have our top scorer, Sinclair, currently out due to injury, which means the youngster Opoku comes in. So, I mean, I'm very, very excited for all of this. I would love you to join me on this journey because it won't only be this season. It will hopefully be next season as well if I, fingers crossed, manage to keep my job. And yeah, I've really been enjoying the journey. So please do go and watch that video. And then if you've watched that video or you just want to support without watching it, sign up to One Future Football. And after you signed up, go to dashboard in the top right corner of the screen, select South London United as your club. And yeah, support, follow the journey because I've been absolutely loving being manager of South London United. So guys, there you have it. That is my Haaland and Salah draft. As I said before, let me know what you think down below in the comments. And let me know if you're enjoying FPL. Like I said, it feels a bit different this year. I've got a bit of a buzz that I haven't had for the last few years. And I think that's to do with the pricing being absolutely spot on. If you have enjoyed today's video, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this point and you've not yet subscribed, what are you doing? Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.